Welcome into the Whole Hog Football Podcast. Arkansas will play Auburn on Saturday. It's going to be a 3 o'clock kickoff at Razorback Stadium, SEC Network. We'll televise the game between a couple of teams that are at the bottom of the SEC West, trying to work their way out of it, along with Mississippi State. The Razorbacks, of course, got the win over Florida last week. Auburn comes into this game on a 2-game winning streak. They've had the good fortune of playing Mississippi State and Vanderbilt the last 2 weeks. That'll help you. But I think back to the first year that Hugh Freeze was at Ole Miss in 2012. They played Arkansas in Little Rock at War Memorial Stadium. And I remember in that game, it just felt like two trains going by each other, one going in the right direction, one going in the wrong direction. Arkansas obviously was in the interim season under John L. Smith. I don't know that I necessarily think Arkansas is going in the wrong direction under Sam Pittman, although we know this season hasn't gone the way that they want it to. But it's weird just kind of thinking about that 2012 game versus this one. You got Auburn on the winning streak. They could be bowl eligible with the win this weekend. Arkansas got some work to do. It's just kind of an interesting feeling going into this game.
It really is, and I feel like I almost say this every week, like as much as I say Arkansas's defense is going to give it a chance to win. But I just don't know really what to make of the team that Arkansas is playing because, yeah, you can look at the schedule and see that, they've won back-to-back games, but it's against probably the two teams that you would most like to play if you needed a win.
Offensively, they're the two worst teams in the SEC.
Really, really
hands
bad.
down.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm not sure Auburn's not 12th.
And yeah, I've got question marks. Obviously, I think it's a very winnable game for Arkansas if they play tough enough and they fight like they have in, the last several weeks, I think they've got a pretty good shot. And, Hunter Yurchek said this at our sports club earlier today. You can't win 3 down the stretch to get bowl eligible if you don't start with the first one. So Arkansas, obviously, they got to take this game seriously, and I think you've got to obviously try to roll momentum over from last week for sure. And Auburn's going to try to do the same thing. But I think even though Arkansas did lose to Mississippi State, Arkansas is a step up in competition, I think, from Mississippi State and Vanderbilt for sure.
I didn't get the black shirt memo, by the way. If you're watching this video,
we cut you out of the group text.
I feel like Mr. Rogers. I came in here and I put a sweater on, took my sport coat off, put a sweater on to try to dress it down a little bit. No, anyway, Ethan, I know you did the scouting report on Auburn this week, like you do every week for the magazine. What have you seen from them? What do you think people should know about the Tigers?
Yeah, I mentioned this earlier in the week, but they just probably couldn't have had a better stretch to close the year. I mean, obviously they have Alabama at the end of the year. Probably going to lose that one. But I mean, this stretch that they've had of Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, then New Mexico State, that's just a very winnable stretch. And they've taken care of business in 2 of them already. This Arkansas game is really big for them, as is Arkansas. But it's bigger for Arkansas, though, to be honest, because Auburn's at 5 wins. They should beat New Mexico State next week and become bowl eligible. Arkansas needs this one to become bowl eligible. I just think it's kind of 2 teams in a similar situation, especially had Arkansas come out on top of Mississippi State. Like that loss just really mars kind of the finish that Arkansas could have had. But it feels like they kind of figured things out with the offensive coordinator change. It's almost like you started 1 week later than you wanted to on trying to finish the season, how it kind of looked like Arkansas could. I think Auburn, though, does really pose a threat just because of the momentum that they have right now. They're really running the football better right now. Their defense has been pretty good all year. There's nothing that Auburn's really great at this year, but they're decent in a lot of areas. Defense, they've been pretty good on third downs. I think they're 3rd in the SEC in third down defense, 18th in the nation. The real thing with Auburn, though, is it just feels like if you can stop the run on them, you should win. They are so bad passing the football. At least they haven't shown that they can do it against anybody of any decent defense can shut them down. So I said this earlier in the week too, but I feel like the start will be really important because both teams have a lot of momentum coming in. I kind of feel like whatever team kind of throws that first punch and puts the other team on their heels will definitely have an advantage.
I feel like turnovers are going to be a big, and you and I wrote about turnovers in our keys today. You've got Auburn, they're +4 in turnover margin. Arkansas is +2. Both of these teams have scored multiple defensive touchdowns this year. I think Arkansas may rank first nationally in defensive touchdowns, or they're up there with 4.
Yeah.
When we do these efficiency ratings every year or every week, and it gives us a score for that week. It says Arkansas 23-22 this week. And so when it just seems like there's such a razor thin margin, turnovers, I feel like really become a potential key. It doesn't have to be a turnover that scores you a touchdown. It could just be one that flips the field position. And that could be a key when I think the teams are maybe as evenly matched as it feels like they are this week. Of course, when we say that, a lot of times it doesn't turn out to be that way.
Arkansas's defense this year has faced short field so many times.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be nice, like if Arkansas, like against Mississippi State, you get a turnover right off the bat, put your offense that had been struggling, I guess, before the bye week, you give them a short field to work with Kenny Guyton. You might get some different results. But I do know, I think Auburn's red zone defense has been improving, if I remember right. But I think like the turnover battle is going to be interesting to watch because this has not been a vintage passing year for KJ. Mm-hmm. He's got a pick in 6 of his last 7 games, and I think he's thrown 2 picks in 2 of those games. He got 8 picks for the year, and I think he had 9 in his first 2 full seasons as a starter. So his decision making hasn't been as sharp as we've been accustomed to seeing. He's got to keep the ball out of harm's way because Auburn's got a couple of DBs. I think it's Jalen Simpson and DJ James. They've got, I think, 6 picks between them, 7 pass breakups, and I think they've only given up 2 touchdowns in pass coverage between the 2 of them. Auburn's secondary, if KJ floats a ball up or throws a ball in double coverage like he did last week for whatever reason, it might get picked off.
Simpson had 4 picks in the first 5 games of the year.
Like pick 6 too.
Yeah, so yeah, I agree with you, and I think that also kind of along that note of it being razor thin, and you talking about the red zone, I feel like red zone will be really important because Arkansas and Auburn each have like an elite kicker. They're both on the Lou Groza. Auburn's kicker is Evan McPherson of the Bengals. His little brother, I think, is Alex McPherson. I hope I'm not messing up his first name, but his little brother is kicking for the Tigers this year, and he's not missed a field goal this year, I don't believe. So I feel like it's going to be really important what team can score touchdowns in the red zone. Arkansas so often this year, it's kind of stalled down there. Auburn can't pass the ball very well. I think whatever team makes plays through the air down in the red zone, I just think touchdowns in red zone will be really big this game because you have 2 kickers who can definitely get you points, but I mean, it might be one of those games where the difference is who's going to capitalize and actually punch it in.
Yeah, Auburn's the only game that Auburn doesn't have a pick in this year is the Texas A&M game. And they've got 2 picks in 3 different games, and in that
game they scored a defensive touchdown on a scoop and score.
And they've got a string of a pick in 5 straight games.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pretty opportunistic defense, I think. And you just KJ kind of looked like himself again last week. He needs to get back to doing that, plus take care of the football throwing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Arkansas, stands a pretty good chance.
It just seems to me they figured out with KJ that what they've been doing with him all year, they were turning him into a quarterback that was not who he is. I mean, and we've talked about it ad nauseum on this podcast. He's not a drop back pocket quarterback. And last week it looked like Kenny Guyton, who has been on staff when KJ was KJ, so to speak, he knew, hey, here's what we got to do with him. And boy, it sure looked like it worked with him and Rocket.
And you saw after the game, I know there was a lot of video footage of just the emotion between Kenny Guyton and KJ just after the game, kind of in the tunnel. It just seemed like KJ, I mean, you wrote a really nice story on it, just like leaving the field with a smile on his face for once, but just like you could see the emotion in him with Kenny Guyton. It was almost like, thank you for just letting me go out there and kind of do what I wanted, like let me play my game. And I think that he's probably getting that second wind of the season, just of like, all right, I'm back. I'm kind of doing what I'm most comfortable with.
I'm interested to see tackles this week. What does Arkansas do with its tackles? Because for one reason or another, they had to make changes to their tackles last week. Tykees Crawford comes in when Patrick Kudus gets hurt. Chambly was totally ineffective. I mean, you look at his Pro Football Focus score; it was bad.
Would it scare me if I looked at it?
33.2. I mean, it was.
That's not real good.
I mean, that's like half of average.
No context.
It's bad. And Devin Manuel came in and played well, fairly well in his spot at left tackle. I think they're going to go with Manuel and Crawford this week.
Yeah.
And that's who I have thought is their 2 best options at tackle all season now. We know why Manuel hadn't played. He's been hurt, dealing with various injuries. I think like 3 different injuries he's had since August. It's affected his practice time. Obviously, it's affected his playing time. I'm going to be surprised if he's not at left tackle and Crawford's at right tackle. It's just kind of like a baseball lineup. What's working, stick with what's hot. And I think that's what they're going to do, because the offense changed when they made their change of tackles in the second half last week.
Yeah, I would be surprised if it wasn't those 2 guys too. And Patrick Kudus has been a guy that, when Patrick Kudus went down with his injury, I think it was in maybe the first half. I think it was second quarter he went down. And I'm writing the live updates for our site, which you can read those during games if you want. I went to Pro Football Focus and was like, okay, I want to try to contextualize what Arkansas is losing with Kudus. He's at the time going into the weekend, he'd played the 3rd most snaps on offense, but he had Arkansas's 3rd lowest overall offense grade.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not going to be very hard to find a replacement that can be better than 3rd worst on the team in terms of offense grade. Like, I know that is a tough position, and I'm obviously in no position or stature to critique really offensive line play. But I think Tykees Crawford has been here for a while, and I think he is probably well past ready to try to contribute, to a full game. And Sam Pittman on Wednesday during the SEC coaches teleconference didn't sound real optimistic that Kudus would be available. So I think it's probably going to be Tykees' show on Saturday.
I think it should be, based on the way he played against Florida. I'm a big believer in riding the hot hand.
Yeah, I mean, you put together as many explosives on offense as Arkansas did last week. I think you have to figure out who was on the field when what worked and keep those guys on the field and do it again.
Mm-hmm. This game is weird to me. I mean, it's like I don't have any feel for how this game's going to go, and I feel like a lot of times we do have a feel for how it's going to go now, and not always turn out that way. I mean, look at Mississippi State a few weeks ago, but I don't know how this goes. It feels like a total toss up, and I guess all the different metrics would support that. I think Arkansas is a 2.5 point favorite by Vegas. Typically, the home team gets about 2 or 3 points. Yeah. I mean, like we said in the efficiency ratings, it's 23
neutral
to 22.
Field is probably
it's
pick 'em.
Weird. Yeah, it's weird because I feel like I'm the same with you. I'm like, I don't know how this game's going to go, but I'm very confident that if Arkansas can maintain Auburn's run game, I would feel very confident picking Arkansas. Like, that's Auburn's. If Jarquez Hunter isn't going for them, I just don't see them have enough points against Arkansas. I said the same thing about Mississippi State, and then Arkansas's offense just laid an absolute egg. It's one of those things. I think the offense for Arkansas is fixed enough now that if the defense can rise to the occasion and stop the run against Auburn, I would feel very confident picking Arkansas. But with how Auburn's been running it recently, I do feel like you can't just go out there and feel great about.
You can't totally overlook anybody if you're Arkansas right now.
At all.
The way they play. But it does feel like the cloud has lifted a little bit on this team. Mm-hmm. Like, all of a sudden, I don't know that it was Dan Enos' fault, but making that change seems like it's just changed something in the building with the personality of everybody. Everybody just seems happier. I know winning will do that to you, but I don't know. It just seems like maybe that cloud is lifted, and maybe this is a different team than what we saw for 4 or 5, 6 weeks.
Yeah, no, I think I keep on repeating things I said earlier in the week, but I feel like if you play that Mississippi State game now, like, that's just one you want back so bad, because you play it now with how they were playing on offense on Saturday. You win that game handily. Like, your defense played so well. I think that that cloud's been lifted. They saw themselves win a 1-possession game. That was a curse that went back to. I mean, they won the Liberty Bowl, but let's be real, they
blew a 25-point lead.
They blew a lead in that one. It's a little bit different story, but I mean that. When was the last time before that they'd won a 1-possession game that was just kind of neck and neck? I guess you could go back.
You wrote about that recently, didn't you?
Yeah,
Cincinnati.
Maybe Cincinnati. Maybe I think there might have been one between Cincinnati and. But yeah, I mean, it had been a
long time since they'd won a 1-possession game.
I think it was Cincinnati. Yeah, it was Cincinnati last year.
Yeah, in the season opener, and that one didn't even feel like a 1-possession game.
It really didn't.
It didn't.
You're
so
right.
It feels like that curse might have been broken a little bit. We'll see this week. I mean, I just think that did so much for their confidence. Not only that you won a 1-possession game, you did it in a place that Arkansas has never won before. You did it in a tough place to go win. So I feel like it's a little bit different mojo right now.
For all the things you say about Florida, they've been a good home team.
Yeah,
I mean, they don't lose a whole lot different. They
wrote about
lose
it
a
in
whole
the
lot
keys.
of home games.
They were completely different offense, home and road or neutral. And then, but Ethan was talking about, and I totally agree. Slowing the run probably has to be your first priority.
Yep.
It's the top of your priority list if you're Arkansas's defense. I think Arkansas is in a position, especially after what you saw from their cornerbacks last week, with Snacks getting an SEC weekly honor.
Yeah.
Nudie is now the top-rated corner in the country by PFF, which we talked about earlier in the week.
Yep.
Jalen Braxton was also honored
Freshman of the week.
Freshman of the week earlier this week. Your corners are good. You're really good. And coming into town is a passing offense that there is a lot to be desired there. I think they're averaging like under 170 yards passing per game.
164.4.
It's just, I think Arkansas is in a position where maybe it's just me, but I think that they can potentially tie one hand behind Auburn's back, take that pass game away, make them one-dimensional. And then if you think Travis Williams' defense is aggressive before that, let his guys pin his ears back and go defend the run and worry about that only because they know the guys behind them have their back. I think you could see a super aggressive Arkansas defense, and that would be a huge key to me.
I completely agree with you, but I also say I do think Arkansas has to be wary of. They've had trouble a lot of times this year defending like the tight end slicing across, and Auburn's tight end is like kind of like he's 1A 1B with the receiver as like key part of their passing game. So I think Arkansas pin your ears back, really stop the run, but can't lose like tight ends like they have so many times this year. I feel like that's killed them in a lot of games. I mean, I know the LSU game is one that comes to mind right off the bat, but there's been several others that I just feel like the tight end like slicing over, they just have lost them. And I think that honestly, if you can take that away and you can pin down like this Auburn offense has not been great this year.
Limit their big plays too. Like Jarquez Hunter got Auburn off to a really good start last week against Vanderbilt. I think 67 and 56-yard touchdown runs. And then after that, it was kind of touch and go offensively for them. I think if you limit a big play early in the game, you get your feet underneath it, I think you got a decent shot.
You can read Ethan's keys or Ethan's scouting report. Scottie and I wrote the keys on our website at wholehogsports.com leading up to this game against Auburn. The Whole Hog Football Podcast is sponsored by Kendle King Design, Display, Signage, KendleKing.com, KendleKing.com.
The Kendle King Group family of companies plays to win, just like our hogs. We know how demanding retail marketing is today. From digital omni-channel creative services, through in-store signing and displays, and finally to social influence, we've got you covered. Our KKG Inc. family of companies, Kendle King, Shopcart Creative, and Soapbox Influence are winning with multiple retailers and brands. We play to win and will be a winning partner for all your retail marketing service needs. Go Hogs!
We'll do a run around the SEC right now. All 14 teams are playing conference games this weekend. That typically doesn't happen. You typically have a non-conference game sprinkled in there next week. Avert your eyes when you look at the schedule next week.
Just watch college basketball next Saturday.
It's a pretty bad week for SEC football next week, but this week we'll start with the early games. Alabama goes to Kentucky. It's an 11 a.m. Central kickoff in Lexington. ESPN will televise. You know how many times Kentucky has beaten Alabama?
Have they ever? Two times.
2 times.
It's not going to happen this weekend at all. Like, I think Alabama's rolling. They put away a pretty good LSU team by a couple touchdowns last weekend, and Missouri's gone in, and I think they probably kind of put Kentucky on the mat, maybe, so to speak. I like Alabama pretty big, maybe 2 scores, if not more.
I'm right there with you. Jalen Milroe played really well last week. Everybody's calling that the most genius move of Nick Saban's career by benching him week 2. I don't know if I'd go that far, but yeah, he's playing really well right now. I like Alabama by a lot.
I just feel like Alabama's strengths and Kentucky's weaknesses conflict to the point that Alabama wins this game.
Going to run for
big.
like 350
I think
yards.
Alabama runs the ball quite a bit on them because this isn't a typical Stoops defense this year. And then, Kentucky, their offense is running the ball. Run right into the teeth of maybe the best run defense in the SEC. A&M obviously has a stake there, but yeah, I think Alabama wins.
It's basketball season in Kentucky now, I guess officially.
There's I remember a great cartoon about 6 or 7 years ago. It's a Kentucky fan jumping up. We're going to a bowl game. The other guy sitting next to him, sit down. The basketball game's on. Vanderbilt goes to South Carolina. It's an 11 a.m. kickoff on SEC Network. Maybe the 2 worst teams in the definitely the 2 worst in the East, I think.
God, that's total sicko committee type stuff right there. Like that's got to be pretty high. I like South Carolina. just because Vanderbilt's
They're not good.
not a good team.
Nope.
I regret this anytime I've ever done it. It's never worked out, but I'm picking Vanderbilt.
Oh my gosh.
I really don't buy South Carolina at all. Like, I watched them in Jacksonville State last week. That was pretty sick. I just wanted to see Gamecock on Gamecock for a little bit. They should have, I feel like they should have lost that game. They played I'm not buying Vanderbilt either. This is more I don't like South Carolina.
I'm trying to go against the grain.
We grew up in different parts of South Arkansas. He didn't see cockfights growing up. I'd seen them already.
South Carolina, bad offensively, bad defensively, but Vanderbilt worse offensively, worse defensively. I think South Carolina, and being at home, I think they win that game. 2:30 kickoff. It's the game of the week on CBS. Tennessee goes to Missouri. Missouri, could the Georgia effect sneak in?
I don't know. I don't think Missouri's got anything to hold their head about after
They played well.
playing at Georgia last week. I think
Held their own.
you saying Georgia effect made me rethink everything. But I do like Missouri. I think that they're in that conversation as like one of the really good teams this year. Probably, obviously, they're not going to get in the college football playoff, but it is a really good team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's exceeded a lot of expectations. Missouri's really good. Like, if you can go and compete with Georgia, like I know that, what was the final score? It was like a 10 or 10 plus point game or something like that. Kudos to them for keeping it that close. A lot of schools go in there and just get their doors blown off. But I think I like Missouri.
I like Missouri as well. I just think that I think we've sold them short for a lot of the year. Just like they're gonna go in Missouri and they're not actually for real. But they haven't really given any reason to think that they aren't.
Say what you want about
a 10-win team.
Say what you want about Drinkwitz. He's got a good team.
Yeah, he's got a very good team.
Brady Cook has, honestly, it's funny because he's played so well this year, but it's like in the last few minutes of the LSU game and then at Georgia thrown really bad time interceptions that have kind of cost them the game. They could, if a couple things go different, they could be undefeated right now.
And Tennessee, I don't know that they're a real good road team this year. I think Missouri wins that in Columbia. Close game. I like the Tigers. Ole Miss goes to Georgia Saturday night, ESPN, 6 o'clock Central kickoff. This feels like the game, and we said this with Missouri going there last week too, but Ole Miss has got a lot higher profile than Missouri does.
Yeah.
I feel like the game where you go in there and it's all hype, and then all of a sudden it's 21-0 Georgia before you even know what happens.
It's going to be a night game in Georgia. I don't imagine that's going to be a very fun place, or probably won't be. Communication is going to be really, really tough for Ole Miss. It's probably going to be similar to the environment that Arkansas went into there a few years ago, but it's 7 hours later in the day.
Yep.
No way Georgia loses that game.
If Ole Miss runs into them earlier in the year, I would feel a lot better about maybe picking an upset, but they are running into Georgia at the wrong time. They're figuring things out. I like Georgia big.
I think Carson Beck is really underrated as a quarterback too. And people say, well, they've done this, they've done that since Brock Bowers went down. The efficiency ratings say Georgia is rolling right along. I mean, they scored 30 points last week against Missouri, but they did it in like 9 possessions. Yeah. And so they're being real efficient, and then defensively they're just so darn good that I think they beat
the
Ole
league
Miss.
In passing, 4-to-1 touchdown interception ratio.
Yeah, he's having
really
a good year. He's having a good year. I don't know that he's Stetson Bennett, but he has stepped in to this point and proven himself well. Georgia, this is their last home game too, by the way. They finished the year back-to-back at Tennessee and at Georgia Tech. Florida goes to LSU. It'll be a night game, 6:30 on the SEC Network. We don't know about what's going to happen with Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I think that determines the winner because their backup is I'm not trusting
Nussmeier. Yeah.
Not trusting him. But I think that Florida team has started its tailspin.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I like LSU at home, especially at night.
I agree. I don't think Florida gets another win this season. I think they finish 5-7 and miss a bowl.
And
they might.
Napier's probably gone.
Yeah, they very well
That's
might.
a job that you can't decline year 1 to year 2 and survive.
This is the game that may save his bacon.
Good.
I mean, especially if they get Jaden Daniels out against LSU. And the way it looked last week at Alabama, it certainly didn't look like he's going to be playing in 7 days. Now, maybe he can make a recovery. Hopefully he can, because I think he's a great player. But I think it all depends on if Jaden Daniels plays. I think if Jaden Daniels doesn't play, I think Florida's got a good chance to go in there and win. They're pissed off after what happened the last 2 weeks. If Daniels plays, I don't think they can slow him down, especially if he's effective and efficient. The other game Saturday night, Mississippi State goes to Texas A&M. It's on ESPN2 at 6:30. avert your eyes whenever Mississippi State is on offense.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say that. I think my bold prediction for the weekend is Mississippi State gets shut out.
I think they might. I really think they might.
I'm with you there. I wouldn't watch a second of this game.
No.
I just think it's ugly colors and going to be ugly football. I like A&M by a lot.
I would watch Vanderbilt, South Carolina over Mississippi State, Texas A&M, just to see if Shane Beamer's, just to see if his
who he blames.
Yeah, if he blames somebody, or I'm kind of there for the downfall.
Maybe kicking another Gatorade bucket and breaking his foot.
Yeah.
You guys are probably too young to remember when Mississippi State and A&M played each other in the Independence Bowl in Shreveport in a snowstorm in the late 90s. That was, I don't know, you're saying the colors. It made me think of that. Yeah, I'm with Scottie. I think Mississippi State may get shut out this week because Texas A&M is so good defensively. I know they didn't play good against Ole Miss last week, but that was an aberration. Defensively, they've been really good this year. And Mississippi State's offense has just totally hit the skids. I think A&M, especially with that being at Kyle Field, I think they win big. All right, finally, Auburn at Arkansas, 3 o'clock kickoff, like we said, on the SEC network. Feels like a toss-up. Vegas thinks it's a toss-up, I feel like. Our efficiency ratings think it's a toss-up. What say you, Scottie?
I like Arkansas. They've given me a reason to pick them again. And I do, like I mentioned earlier, I think that Arkansas's defense, especially like your cornerback spots, I think you've got guys that can, again, kind of tie a hand behind Auburn's back and make them run the ball first.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what they want. I think that's what Auburn wants to do anyway. But obviously, you've got to, give your run game some slack by trying to throw it. If Arkansas can take the throw away, I think that they can, gang up on Jarquez Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, I think this comes down to just two big things. Can Arkansas stop the run, and does Arkansas's offense continue and pick up where it did off last week? I'm going to go ahead and pick Arkansas. I think it'll be close, though.
I think, the fact Arkansas is at home, and we wrote on this today, they don't have a great home field advantage. They just don't. But there's always time to start one, you know what I mean? And I feel like this is a time where they could do that against Auburn this week. There was a great crowd. I was really impressed with how the crowd showed up for Mississippi State a few weeks ago, given that Arkansas was a 2-win team. They had won an SEC game. It was an 11 a.m. kickoff. All of these ingredients were in place for it to be a horrible crowd. And give those people a lot of credit because they were in it until the bitter end, and it was a bitter end in that game against Mississippi State.
They stuck around a lot longer than I wanted to.
I mean, they gave them a lot more home field advantage, I feel like, than most teams who are 2-5 and winless in the SEC and can't score a touchdown would get in that game. I think they're going to give them a great home field advantage on Saturday. And then the other thing I look at, in addition to who's at home, who's on the road, is like the quality of wins. You look at Auburn's schedule. Here's who they've beaten. They've beaten UMass. They won at Cal. They beat Samford, an FCS team. UMass, by the way, may be the worst team in FBS right now. Then they beat Vanderbilt, worst team in the SEC. They beat Mississippi State, the second worst team in the SEC. Now, I know Arkansas lost to Mississippi State, but I like Arkansas's win over Florida more, especially being on the road, more than I like any of those Auburn wins. And, for that reason, I think Arkansas wins. I'm with you. I just think there's a different feel about the team right now. And, I think they've got a little bit momentum that could.
There are reasons to like Arkansas again, and I think a lot of the reasons are offense. KJ looked like himself again. Rocket, was his right-hand man again, and they complement each other so well. You talk about how they feed off each other. It's so true. I'm
back to thinking about Arkansas maybe the way I did after week 4, where offensively they weren't bad against BYU. They were good against LSU. Now, granted, LSU's defense is really bad, but I'm back at that point where I feel like offensively I believe in Arkansas having some success again. And Auburn defensively, you mentioned they've improved their metrics. Again, they've improved the metrics against really bad
teams,
offenses. I think this is going to be the best offense that Auburn's seen in a while, and that may be saying
definitely
something.
Definitely since Ole Miss.
I mean, I think it's saying something given how bad Arkansas has been, but we'll see this week. Was last week fool's gold offensively, or is that something that's sustainable?
Yeah.
I tend to think it's something that's sustainable, at least up until the Missouri game.
I still think Auburn, what they did, they held Georgia to 27, Ole Miss to 20. I still think they have a pretty good defense, even if they have played some bad teams in between, but I'm with you there.
All right. WholeHogSports.com if you want to read our coverage leading up to the game, obviously after the game. Plenty of basketball coverage, too. Friday, there's going to be a doubleheader at Bud Walton Arena. It feels like high school basketball where you got the girls playing and then the boys playing. Ethan and Scottie and I will all be there and have plenty of coverage from basketball got NCAA soccer this weekend, a ton of stuff going on campus, and you can read about all of it at wholehogsports.com. For Ethan Westerman and Scottie Bordelon, I'm Matt Jones. Hope you'll join us next week on the Whole Hog Football Podcast as we look back at Arkansas Auburn. Have a great weekend, everyone.